So happy Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. There is tutoring after school today from 4:40 to 5:30, but if nobody shows up by 5, I will probably get the heck out of here. So, because once again, baby's supposed to be coming home today. I sure hope that is the case. But if anybody shows up and needs me, sure, I can stay till 5:30. Mr. Carvajal, why did I get such a low grade on that assignment? Mr. Carvajal, what can I do to raise my grade? Mr. Carvajal, I need to make up attendance hours. Come see me after school today, Tuesdays and Thursdays. You know the drill. You can click on the link on my main page in Schoology. It's right there for you. Today we'll use inferencing skills to compare and contrast, right? How are things the same? How are things different? And as usual, for this semester, that mindset of, I will do the work now. If you put it off to later, it piles up. So let's take care of it as it comes, and then we never have a pile we have to dig ourselves out of. So I will use my inferencing skills and imagination to compare and contrast things. And then after our reading today, well, what did you notice? So explain that in our discussion. And before we do anything else, we're going to do our positive affirmations. They are so good for us. And I'm not in a great mood. I don't know about y'all. I was not happy coming back today. It always seems worse after a Monday off to come back on a Tuesday. Like, do I really have to go back to school? No, I don't have to, but I want to because I'm a good person. So come on, let's do these. What are you? I am strong, confident, and successful. Yes, we are. And how do you feel about getting work done?
I
I
love getting
love
work
getting
done.
work done. And how do you feel about schoolwork? The
The
harder I
harder I work,
work,
the stronger
the
I
stronger I
become.
become. Absolutely, so true. All right, and I have to do a little comedy because that's how I roll. I like this. I like to thank my legs for supporting me. Get it? Legs supporting me. Yeah, I know, it's hilarious. And my arms for always being by my side. And my fingers. I could always count on them. So, so dumb. I just love it. They're puns, right? They're words that could be taken in two different ways. And of course, we always talk about thanks. Thank you for my friends and family for supporting me. It's used in different ways, and that's the silliness and fun of puns. So I've got some good puns for us this week. And and if you thought that was funny, that means you're a crazy nerd like I am. Woohoo! So more power to you. So for the work, yay work. If you are not passing right now, it has to be probably that research, right? Research one and research two. And a number of people got low grades. Some people didn't do everything they were supposed to do. I got quite a few 60s. I even got some 40s because people left stuff off. So you want to be sure that you are doing the annotation paragraph, right? You do the citation, you do the quote, and then you have to do the annotation paragraph. A lot of people really kind of slipped up with the credibility. If you haven't done it yet, good. Pay attention now so you can get a better grade on it. The credibility is not like I'm going to grade you on the credibility like it has to be perfect because we know there's nothing really perfect. Credibility is about you paying attention and documenting. So just keep that in mind. Currency, how recent is it? Is it 2021, 2020? Was it 2015 or 2010? The more recent, the better. Keep that in mind. Website type, well, these kind of government websites are more credible than this or definitely that, right? So keep that in mind. But if it is from a .com, does that mean I'm going to give you a lower grade? No, that's not what this is about. It's not like, oh, to get an A, you have to have this kind of website and it has to have this many references or bibliography. All you're doing is just documenting what you found, and it's showing that you are researching and paying attention. So keep that in mind. You probably want to mention it, at least two or three of these to get full credit. Okay, it was from 2019. That's fairly recent. It was from a .org, which could be fairly credible. The author is a well-known author, and I looked him up, and he or she has won awards, blah, 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 blah. You can also Google the webpage, the owner of it, and find information on that. Um, Peer reviewed, these are the kind of things that you might find, especially in the academic databases. So just notice that. Is it peer reviewed? Does it have any references or bibliography at the bottom? And that's all that you have to do. Does it have them? Does it not have them? Mention at least 2 or 3 of these under credibility on that annotation paragraph, and you've got it good. For the citations, it's supposed to be full APA citation. And I've showed you plenty of times, if you look back at last week's videos, you can't just copy and paste excuse me, you can't just copy and paste the URL and call that your citation. It has to be the APA citation. So if you paste the URL into the citation generator that I provided, and that one works better, trust me, it's a lot less trouble. And then you just have to click on today's date and then copy and paste that in. So be sure you do that because people lost points for that too. Research summative, I put that in yesterday, and it's basically what you got research 1 and what you got on research 2, and they're averaged together. So keep that in mind. I've had several people uploading. It was an upload to a research summative assignment. Well, there's nothing to upload. If your grade is low on research summative, you probably have a 0 on one or both of these, or you got like a 50 or a 60 on one of them. So, you know what I mean, right? Oh, I got a 60 on one and an 80 on the other, so I got a 70 for the research summative. That's all you need to do. So just be sure that you keep up with them. The other thing to remember too is at the bottom, remember you have to write your thesis, and the thesis is about the nonprofit you researched. And I've had several people still getting confused. Oh, they're upset about veterans' homelessness. Well, your thesis is not about how horrible veterans being homeless is. Your thesis is on the nonprofit. So keep that in mind. The research is about the nonprofit, and your thesis is about the nonprofit. How good of a job do they do? How good of a company are they? And you use your research, what you found in the reviews, to come up with that thesis. So there's no right or wrong answer to that, right? Somebody can say, well, because of my research, I don't think they do that great of a job. And then why? And then you tell us why. Or, oh, they do a great job. No, they're not perfect, but these are the good things that they do. As long as you give me a what do you think and why that is related to your research on the nonprofit, your thesis is going to be fine. But if you tell me, children in foster care have a really hard life and we need to help them out. Well, but you're not supposed to be researching children in foster care. You're supposed to research St. Jude's Children's Ranch or Boysville or things like that. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Mr. Carvajal, I got a 40, I got a 50. Well, of course, you can revise it. You can change it. You can redo it. Some of you I already messaged and said, hey, you only did half of it. You didn't do the annotation paragraph, or you didn't write your thesis or whatever. If I messaged you, check your message, and I probably already unsubmitted it so you can redo it. So keep that in mind. If you have a 70 and an 80 and your test grade is a 75 and you want it higher, I don't blame you. I'd want it higher too, right? Because we are strong, confident, and successful. So same thing, message me, and sure, I'll unsubmit it. I'll let you revise it. So that's just our reminders for this week. And of course, let me add this on here too. Where can I add it? I guess I'll go to the next page. Oh well. Keep in mind, let me put all capitals. This Friday is the 3-week grade check. And that's why I kind of rushed to get all this put in by today. So if you need catching up, if you are a procrastinator, then just forgive yourself, get to work, get it done. And the assignments this week are pretty much just to continue building on the research we've already done and that mindset. So if you get caught up, now is a perfect time if you need to get caught up to do just that. Okay, once again, if you have any questions about any of this, be sure and check with me, message me in the chat, or send me a message through Schoology or an email, and come see me after school today. Okay, so after all that, I know that was a lot. Thank you for being patient. We're going to go into, not that. Here we go into our Schoology. And I'm trying to build in us this mindset of research, of looking into things. And I talked about, before you buy a car, or before you buy a dishwasher, or anything like that, taking that time to find out what you're getting is important. And I do that quite a bit anytime I'm making any kind of a major purchase. There's also been times where, like, I've been inside a Best Buy and I'm going to buy something, and I go on Best Buy's website and it's like $10 cheaper. And heck yeah, it pays to do that. Hey, it's on the website for $79 instead of $89. Can I have the website price? And they always tell me yes, because I love being thrifty. I love saving money. So that's a great reason to research too. The other thing is to get perspective. So many of us really, are products of our generation, right? Things have always been the way they are. So if there's any kind of a blip or any kind of a change, oh my God, how many times do you see on social media, right? 2020 is the worst year ever. 2021 is no better. I want a refund. All kinds of stuff like that. And that's because so many of us have had it so good for so long that we have no idea how things have been in the past. Oh, we've heard of history. We've heard of the Black Plague, and we've heard of World War I and World War II, and all these horrible things that people have gone through. But people alive today know so little about that, right? 100 years ago, in 1920, what were things like? People didn't have electricity. A lot of people didn't have running water in their homes. If you jump somebody in time from 1920 to 2020, wow, they think they died and gone to heaven. We have it so easy and so good to just walk into a room and flip a switch and lights come on. You go to the toilet, pull the lever, and water flushes it away. Wow, what a concept. But for us, it's commonplace. And that's another good thing, that research into the past can really help us get a better understanding of wow, you think 2020 is awful? Well, of course, if you've had somebody in your family really get ill, somebody in your family who passed away, yes, I'm not saying that that's not a terrible thing. Of course it is. But when you take a worldwide perspective and see how much better are things today than 20, 40, 60, 100 years ago, it's really beneficial, I think. So I looked up an article on the Spanish flu pandemic. And I want us to think about that idea of comparing and contrasting. These are how things are the same, and these are how things are different, and get an idea of how things are. So one of the things that I did was just Google COVID-19 and how it's been, and look at these numbers. Wow, this many cases, 2.04 million deaths. That's a lot of people dying, but look how many have recovered. And that's something to really think about too. That's a good perspective to have. And how hard was that? Deaths due to COVID-19, Google search, and boom, there it is. We have so much information available at our fingertips. It's pretty amazing how easy things are for us. So just remember these numbers and think about that. And then let's go ahead and look at this article. And I'm just going to go ahead and read through it. Please read along with me. And when you're reading nonfiction like this, just like when you're reading a short story, this is like a news information writing. So you want to imagine a documentary. If any of us like watching the History Channel or Discovery Channel or anything like that, we've all seen documentaries, right? So that's how you're going to imagine this. When you're watching science or medical-based stuff and you see words you don't know, if you just think to yourself, science, medical, when you say blah, you will start to figure out the meaning of a lot of these bigger words. Okay, so let's read along with me. And when we're done, once again, you're going to talk about comparing and contrasting. How were things back then the same, and how are they different compared to things now? And I think it'll give us a better perspective on yes, 2020 was not great in a lot of ways, but boy, things could have been a heck of a lot worse. Okay, so the 1918 flu pandemic that killed millions. by History.com, adapted by Newsela staff from 2017. In this picture, the American Red Cross nurses tend to flu patients in temporary wards set up inside Oakland, California Municipal Auditorium. So many people were sick. This was an auditorium. They had to turn that into a makeshift hospital. It's from 1918. The influenza or flu pandemic of 1918 to 1919, the deadliest in modern history, infected an estimated 500 million people worldwide, about 1/3 of the planet's population at the time, and killed an estimated, look at this, how many people died from this? The conservative one, right, is 10 times more than what's happened so far with COVID. More than 25% of the US population became sick, and some 675,000 Americans died. And keep in mind, there were a lot less people in the world then than there are today as well. The 1918 flu was first observed in Europe, the United States, and part of Asia, before swiftly spreading around the world. Surprisingly, many victims were young, otherwise healthy adults. At the time, there were no effective drugs or vaccines to treat this killer flu strain or prevent its spread. In the US, citizens were ordered to wear masks, and schools, theaters, and other public places were closed. Researchers later discovered what made the 1918 pandemic so deadly. The influenza virus invaded victims' lungs and caused pneumonia. Flu facts. Influenza, also called the flu, is a virus that attacks the respiratory system. The virus is highly contagious. When an infected person coughs, sneezes, or talks, respiratory droplets are generated and transmitted into the air and can then be inhaled by anyone nearby. Additionally, a person who touches something with the virus on it and then touches his or her mouth, eyes, or nose can become infected. Flu outbreaks happen every year and vary in severity, depending in part on what type of virus is spreading. Flu viruses can develop and change quickly. In the US, flu season generally runs from late fall into spring. In a typical year, more than 200,000 Americans are hospitalized for flu-related complications, including pneumonia, ear and sinus infections, and bronchitis. During the last 3 decades, between 3,000 and 49,000 people have died annually because of the flu, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Some people, such as young children, people over age 65, and pregnant women, face a higher risk of getting sick. Also vulnerable are people with certain medical conditions such as asthma, diabetes, or heart disease. A flu pandemic, such as the one in 1918, occurs when an especially virulent new influenza strain, for which there's little or no immunity, appears and spreads quickly from person to person around the globe. The flu strikes far and wide. The first wave of the 1918 pandemic occurred in the spring and was generally mild. The sick who experienced such typical flu symptoms as chills, fever, and fatigue usually recovered after several days, and the number of reported deaths was low. However, a second, highly contagious wave of influenza appeared in the fall of that same year. That's interesting. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Victims died. Look at this. What happened to victims? They died within hours or days. Their skin turned blue and their lungs filled with fluid, causing them to suffocate. It's unknown exactly what the particular strain of influenza that caused the pandemic came from. It became known around the world as the Spanish flu because Spain was one of the earliest countries to be hit hard by the disease. One unusual aspect of the 1918 flu was that it struck down many previously healthy younger men and women, a group normally resistant to this type of illness. In fact, according to journalist Gina Kolata, more US soldiers died from the 1918 flu than died in battle during World War I. Although the death toll of the 1918 flu is often estimated at 20 to 50 million victims worldwide, other estimates run as high as 100 million. The exact numbers are impossible to know due to lack of medical record keeping in many places. What is known, however, is that few locations were immune. In the US, victims ranged from residents of major cities to those of remote Alaskan communities. Fighting the flu. When the 1918 flu hit, doctors and scientists were unsure what caused it or how to treat it. Unlike today, they had no effective vaccines or antivirals or drugs to treat the flu. Complicating matters was the fact that World War I had left parts of America with a shortage of physicians and health workers. Moreover, many of these medical personnel then came down with the flu themselves. In some areas, hospitals were so overloaded with flu patients that schools and private homes had to be converted into makeshift hospitals, some of which were staffed by medical students. That's interesting, isn't it? Officials in some communities quarantined the sick. They ordered citizens to wear masks and shut down public places, including schools, churches, and theaters. People were advised to avoid shaking hands and to stay indoors. Libraries put a halt on lending books, and laws were even passed to make spitting illegal. The flu takes a heavy toll on society. The flu took a heavy human toll, wiping out entire families and leaving countless widows and orphans in its wake. The outbreak was also detrimental to the US economy. Many businesses were forced to shut down because so many employees were sick. Basic services such as mail delivery and garbage collection were affected. And in some places, there weren't enough farm workers to harvest crops. So how did the pandemic finally end? Let's find out. By the summer of 1919, the flu pandemic came to an end. Those people who were infected had either died or developed immunity. That's all there was to it, right? You got sick, and if you survived, you were immune, and that was about the only thing that would protect you. Almost 90 years later, in 2008, researchers announced they discovered what made the 1918 flu so deadly. It was a group of 3 genes that enabled the virus to weaken a victim's bronchial tubes and lungs, so that pneumonia easily developed. Since 1918, there have been several other influenza pandemics, although none quite as deadly. One pandemic from 57 to 58 killed around 2 million people worldwide. That's kind of where we're at now with coronavirus, right? Including some 70,000 in the US. Another flu pandemic from 68 to 69 killed approximately 1 people, including 34,000, and more than 12,000 died during H1N1 or swine flu that occurred from 2009 to 2010. So most of y'all, when were you born? In the early 2000s, right? The worst pandemic was this in your lifetimes. How could you be aware of what could have happened 100 years ago? And that's another reason, once again, to research and find out. Look around yourself, go on Google, find out stuff. And then once again, you get into that habit of verifying, checking information, and save yourself money and widen your perspective. So just keep that in mind. So what I'd like you to do is think about what we've read and compare and contrast. How are things the same today? How are things different? You can post that in our discussion. And also, if you want to go online and Google other pandemics, other diseases and illnesses from the past and how they affected us. And you will see as you go back further and further in time, less and less was known, more and more people got sick, and there was really nothing that could be done other than just pray that you survived it. So that's pretty much it for today. You've got work to do to catch up on, do that. If you have questions for me, be sure and ask them, and I'll give us about 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'll go over our discussion responses, and we'll see the kind of answers that we got.